So today I had the opportunity to talk and have a discussion with Saad Afridi, the director of design for Wisdoms in the Wild, the book that I recently released. In it, we got to have a number of conversations related to AI, creativity, the design process, and we even got to talk about AI agents. Saad is an amazing designer, but in addition to being an amazing designer, he's also an amazing technologist who spent a number of years working with building software, building incredible applications, and incredible user experiences. So, without further ado, here's our conversation. We look forward to you enjoying some of the thoughts that we share. And if you really like the things that we said and would like to hear more, please leave a comment. We'd love for you to like and subscribe. And we're looking forward to bringing you more of our conversations. Take care and enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why they would get hung up by AI because it's just a tool. So they're just drawing a line between like where they want the tool to step in versus how much work they're going to put in. So like these guys, they're all using different brush packs and like asset libraries for their art anyway. So they're not creating that from scratch. So it's like in a sense they're using
It's true, yeah.
well resources, right? So yeah, I mean, you could get mad about where you're drawing the line, but I don't really see AI as like this boogeyman. Like that dude Benny Productions on YouTube, the Photoshop guy who takes like different assets, different images and puts them together. He's not making those assets. He's like using stock photos. So, what's the difference between getting a stock photo off of like Google Images or getting it out of Midjourney? So, I mean, I don't know. I don't see the fuss about it, right? About all this like, oh, the AI is encroaching on artists. I could see the argument if somebody is literally just typing in something in Midjourney and doing like a simple sentence prompt and then getting the output out of that and then being like, okay, now I'm done. But if you're doing any work on top of that, then it's just like any other creative pipeline. You're using something to base off of, right? Some image, some asset. You're editing it. You're playing around with it. You're recreating it. So yeah, I don't see the fuss
I
about
think
like, oh, it's coming
I
and
think
taking everything that we worked so hard to build.
I think most people's gripe is not like stock footage. It's like, let's say, like when we were doing like wisdoms, right?
It's like
We
slop.
we used like, we found an artist, off of DeviantArt, a specific type of person, and then, we were inspired by this style and used it in a prompt. Well, there's a lot of people who
Yeah,
just kind of like use that prompt and then they're like, oh, let's just use this guy Johnny Cash's, like visual style, and this is what we want. And then
right.
Johnny Cash comes along and is like, "Hold on, I spent like 27 years making this specific style, and then you came and then you like just used it, and then the AI like
Yeah,
copied it, right?" I think that's where the hang up is, and I don't
I
I
could
don't
see
really
that.
have I don't really have like a solution to those people. It's like, well, it's kind of just
I could see that, right? Their argument is that the AI has been trained on our work, which we took a long time to develop our style. We took a
absolutely.
long time to like develop our talent to get to that point. So I could see the argument that like the AI just comes and is trained on all that. But that's an argument against like these companies that are training the AIs on protected like copyrighted works, right? Which like that's like the Spotify, that's like when Spotify started off streaming pirated MP3s. Like that's on Spotify or whatever. And if you need to cut that out because like we don't want to get sued by Spotify, we could cut it out. But I'm just saying like that's on them, right? But even conceptually, is there a difference between an AI being trained on a set of images versus me pulling up a bunch of images for inspiration and then being like, oh, I like that style. I'm going to try to mimic that style and I'm going to try to recreate that for some other work that I'm doing, right? Like as a human, I'm
Absolutely.
also just looking at all these images, getting inspiration and like recreating that stuff. All those inspirations go into my work anyway. So is it AI now that different when it's trained on copyrighted materials? I don't know the answer to that question, but like, it's worth asking the question.
True, true.
I could see it. I mean, I understand people have trepidation around the AI stuff, especially artists, because they think that their work is now being like thrown out the window. But I mean, like you said in the other video, it's really enhancing what they can do. It's not really taking away from what they can do. And the smart artists are going to start using that and start realizing sooner or later that we can use this stuff to help us, and maybe it can help us stand apart from other people. Maybe it can allow us to do more, right? Like, what we were able to do uh, an output before, now we can output like 2 or 3 times more than that. So maybe it might help.
You know something I've been thinking about or whatever, which is like the whole idea I mentioned about creativity, where it's not possible for like an AI to be creative. Somebody was bringing up how
Yeah.
in like 20 years or like 50 years eventually when the AI becomes powerful, like then it'll be able to be creative because like then it'll have more like human
Yeah.
input and training. Like what do you think about
I guess we'd have to think about like what it means to be creative. And not like in the philosophical, like wishy-washy sense of like, oh, what is art or whatever, but like
that?
what does it actually mean to, create something? So can AI create an image? I would argue it already can, right? But that's still a directed process. Like you're having to prompt it to do that. It's not like it has a will where it's like I'm inspired by something I saw today. I went outside, I looked at nature, or I observed something, and that inspired me to like express myself creatively. The AI is not doing that, and it probably wouldn't unless it's sentient. So you're still having to direct it to do that. Oh, generate me an image of, XYZ. So the creative um, catalyst is still you, right? Where you're inputting um, the parameters, and then it's using that to go then generate something. So like if we're talking about creativity in the sense that like it can spontaneously just come up with something, yeah, I don't know. Like it'd have to have will to do that, right?
What about in the situation, like a human being, for example, and I guess this might be getting a little bit too philosophical, but like a human being does some things because it has certain drives and purposes. Like
Yeah,
I go to work because I have a family and I want to, raise my family and provide for them. So I do all these things and the inputs that come into work are because of the things I'm doing for my family. Now, let's say you have
yeah,
like an AI agent, right? Where you have given this agent like a task to do. Like, okay, I want to build a travel booking website. Okay. Now, as part of the travel booking website, the agent also has to create like stock photography that's part of this
right.
travel website. Now, it's going to go ahead and generate
It's
like
sub.
images. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a subtask of one of
yeah,
its tasks is fulfilling the purpose, its larger purpose of the agent's larger
yeah,
purpose of, creating this travel booking website, right? So
yeah.
then it does have purpose in that regard. And I guess it gets a little bit more philosophical, right? Like, is it creative then?
Yeah, I guess that the question is then, right? Like the Midjourney prompts, the image generation prompts are very specific tasks, right? And it's probably breaking that out into subtasks too, right? Like where it's generating a noise pattern and then doing all this stuff. But you're basically asking the question, if we get to the point where the prompt is just like something so high level and it's just like be a human or something, and everything else now is a subtask to that. Can we get to that point? I mean, I don't know. You'd have to ask some of these researchers or whatever. Um, yeah, like I don't know if it can achieve that level. That is literally artificial general intelligence, right? Where it's generally intelligent and it has a very high level directive to just, you know, be human or whatever that means, and then it does all these other things as a result of that. But even for that, I don't know. Like, what do you like? You'd have to define what it means to be human, right? And what activities that involve, and all of the things. Like you're essentially asking, can we reach a point where the entire human experience and human condition can be distilled into a set of instructions or a set of, you know, directives and tasks that a machine can then mimic or like replicate. Know that I don't even know what that means. You know what I mean? Like I don't know like how you how you would do that. I mean, I guess these AI researchers, that's what they're trying to do. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, do you think we'll get there?
I mean, I don't know if we'll get to the point where you could just say like be a human and then it, figures out
Yeah,
all the inputs of what that is. But I
right.
do think we will, like they just announced like the agentic
Yeah,
stuff that's coming. Like I think that this morning there was like the Nvidia stream, right, with Jensen, and he talked about like
yeah,
the 2025 is like the year of agents, and like a lot of people actually don't know what that means. They think it's just like Chat GPT that like just gets told to go do something. It's like, yeah,
maybe they're
that
thinking of Mr. Smith from The Matrix.
actually Mr. Smith is a good example though, right? Like because Mr. Smith is given like certain tasks to do, but Mr. Smith,
Yeah,
I guess like he's like a more powerful version of an agent, right? But it
yeah,
is a good example of what an agent is supposed to do. It's supposed to carry out
yeah,
certain tasks for the Matrix, basically.
right.
Um,
But
and
even the agents, right? And like they're are they what kind of scope do they have? Is it a narrow how broad is the scope that they have to operate under?
I think it will be like a range, right? I don't think it's just going to be like, okay, just you do all of the things. I think it will be
Yeah,
specific to like, okay, it's either less agentic and it has more like power to do certain things and more, less or more agentic. So like for example, you might have like multiple agents working together. You have like a call center agent. You might have a the agent who does like the booking. Let's just use the travel booking example. You have the agent
yeah,
that does the booking. You have the agent that does, the customer service. You have the agent that, generates stock photography. So essentially like you have the entire travel booking company all working as agents and they're all
yeah.
communicating with
You
one
have an
another.
agent on top of that that manages all the other agents. They're just, they're just recreating corporate hierarchy among the robots.
I mean, I think so. I think that will happen, right? So, for example, let's say right now we have like microservice architecture, right, for technology, where you have an application and it's got a front end, and then this front end connects to all of these like back end services. So, using the travel example, you're a UX designer, so you build the front end, right? And you
I don't want
have
to talk about
you build the front end, right? And you build
that.
out like buttons and inputs and all this other things. All that stuff now just gets replaced with like a bot. You can
Yeah.
communicate with that bot via voice, via video, via text. And maybe it's not even any of those modalities. Maybe it just kind of knows because it's discussing with you all the time. Like, it maybe it's listening to you all the time, knows your life and it's just like, oh, and it just now is that's your interface with these services. Now on the back end, it's connecting to all of these other, instead of microservices that it connects to, it's going to connect to all of these other agents. That's like, okay, I need to go book something, I need to go pay for something, I need to book the ticket, I need to talk to the airline.
Mm.
So you're no longer going to have to interface with some website. You'll just interface with your personal bot, which will then in turn go interface
Yeah.
with all these other bots that will deal with all the other problems.
Mm.
Now, I know that's like a
Yeah.
really far away discussion from like design and what like creativity means, but I think that's the world that we're kind of stepping into.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, I don't know how. I need to see an example of these agents in action to see like what. Basically, I want to see what they mess up at. I want to see what they mess up at, and then that'll determine the limit
Well,
right now.
I think a good example. I don't know if you've seen Devon. Have you seen Devon, like
Yeah,
the coding exam?
the stuff.
So
Yeah, stuff safe shares, right? Like
yeah, so Devon is not actually good at all. Like if you actually pay attention to its input, because here's what happens. I've used like on
I've
Copilot.
seen the video.
On Copilot, I've also done it. On Cursor, you can do some agent stuff where like you tell it to do
Yeah.
things and it'll start building. The problem is that an agent, very similar to, untrained humans or whatever, it will go down a path and it doesn't
Yeah.
realize that it's like on the wrong path, and then it'll just like keep like, recursively trying to solve that
Mhm.
problem that it's stuck in, and it doesn't creatively realize that it needs to go back. And I think this actually goes back to the original discussion about
Yeah,
creativity.
so then you're going to have to do a lot of cleanup work, and you're going to have to spend time trying to figure out where it went wrong and redirect it in the right direction. That's still a lot of work for
Yeah, so I think
the
we're
end.
still a ways off or whatever, but like I mean, I think that I was coming to the creativity discussion in terms of like, if you have like an agent and then it has to be creative, it's going to be that's how it'll be
Yeah,
creative, right?
yeah. Like if it can break things out into subtasks.
Yeah. But while we're on the discussion of wisdoms in the wild, now, what was your like design process with making like wisdoms in the
A design process? Bro, you know the design process. You just hit a button and out popped the book.
wild?
Um, no, I mean, it's hard for me to explain the process because it's messy. It it's a lot of hours, a lot of trial and error, especially with the AI stuff, right? Where, even if you have the AI to help you generate a lot of the assets that you're going to use, the images, just the back and forth process with the AI of getting what you want, especially if you have a strong vision of what the final product should be, is is really annoying. It's really difficult, and you have to have a lot of patience for it. So it's not like we just hit a button, we got exactly what we wanted, and that was the end of it. Um, we had to do a lot of different generations. We had to go on top of that, and then edit a lot of these images quite a bit. So yeah, it was not a simple process. I think we'll have to distill it into something that's more um, is more easily explained. But yeah, like it was, we were sitting there for hours trying to get output that we liked, and then going and trying to use those base assets for other things that we were doing is a lot of work, like putting the book together, the various elements on top of that. So it's definitely like you need to have an idea of what you're doing. Otherwise, you know, you're not going to get what you want, right?
Yeah.
And you have to have some experience with that.
I think I know whenever a lot of people hear like, oh, you used AI, people think like, oh, you just put in something and it just, gives you an output. Like we were just doing work, for a friend who, wanted some mock-ups of character design. And, like to a non-technical mind, they're just like, oh, just put stuff in and it pops it
Yeah.
all out, right? Like that's not the case, and
You
I
know,
think we're far from that.
you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the conversations that they used to have when CGI first came out, right? Like literally it's called computer generated imagery. So when they first started using CGI in movies, this whole discussion came up around like, oh, are they really artists? What are they doing? They just sit in front of a computer and like the computer does everything, right? That was the layman's understanding of like how CGI worked. Oh, like you could just generate anything you want. The computer knows exactly what you want, and you just like you hit the enter button, and then it outputs all this amazing stuff that you see in movies. So that's kind of the same discussions that's happening now with AI is oh, they're just going into these image generation models, pressing a button, and it gives them what they want. And there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes in between generating what you need and what the ultimate final result is going to be. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in behind the scenes,
And
which
if you think
will
about it,
bring you
actually,
into the process.
yeah, I mean, if you think about it, actually, CGI is not so different from AI. It's because we use the term AI. Like AI is a bad term. It's not intelligent
That
at all, right? Like it's just yeah, it's a more complex algorithm. It works a little bit differently than other
But they used to
algorithms.
say AI is everything that hasn't been done yet,
Yeah, yeah, it's true.
like in compute, right?
It's
Where
true.
it's like, even some of the things that when computers first came out probably would have been considered, right, like intelligence in some rudimentary form, are now just things that we know are like, okay, that's just what a computer can do.
Right, right, right.
Some frontier of that with these models. So yeah,
Word. Well, it was nice getting your thoughts and feedback on your thoughts and creative process on the book. I'm looking forward to book two. So inshallah, we're working on that.
common.